to get this truth out to the world, because it's a real game changer. It's a real it turns your whole world upside down, because if you've been thinking that the Earth is out there in the remote recesses of space, as Carl Sagan has told us, well, now you have a completely different view. That view is that the Earth is in the center of the universe, which makes you the center of the universe, which makes you significant, and thus much closer to the God who created you, and a much better platform from which to view the rest of the world.
I think without a doubt. One question I would have on that, can you talk a little bit about, and I'm just speculating here, was there some sort of issue with getting the movie The Principal out? Because it seemed like it was supposed to come out, 2014. I heard a lot about it coming out in theaters in the early part of the year, and then it kind of seemed to stretch and stretch. So I'm just guessing, were you kind of getting flack from people, or can you kind of talk about why it didn't come out or why it wasn't released, say, nationwide?
Yeah, well, it all revolves around money, as you know. Money, I hate to say it, makes the world go around in a sense. If you don't have the money to do something, then you will be stopped in your tracks. So you can have all the good ideas you want, but you have to have the money to do it. We raised enough money to get into the theaters that we did, and because we had some bad press, and let me give you an idea of what bad press is. We were the third trending story in the world in April 2014. The movie The Principal, third trending story. So we had 150 news outlets basically coming at us and saying, we were a bunch of quacks and didn't know what we were doing, and we lied and got people to come into the movie who, under false pretenses and all kinds of things like that. And all of them were untrue. And we had the evidence to prove it. We did go on one of the Catholic channels, Michael Voris's Catholic Militant, I think it's called, and we told the story with the evidence. We had the signed releases from all these people, so we didn't lie to anybody. And we did know what we were talking about because we did all the research, and we had the top cosmologists in the United States basically saying the same thing we were saying, only in a different way. And that's all in the movie The Principal. So, yeah, we did get a lot of flack, and that flack may have ended up in curtailing some of the potential investors that we had lined up to give us the money we needed to go across the nation in the theaters. And in order to do that, you have to have millions of dollars. And that's what we were hoping for, and then the rug was pulled out from under us. So we had to stop our theatrical run in April of this past year. And but that's good, because actually the movie industry is in a transition period right now where the only movies that are actually making money are the Batmans and the Thors and the spectacular movies like that. The intelligent movies, you may see them in the theaters, but only 3 out of about 10 actually make money. And the transition now is into the electronic medium, DVD and VOD and streaming and all kinds of things like that, which is probably where we should have headed at first, but we did feel that if we got into the theaters, which we did, that it would give us credibility with the people that still believed in theaters as the medium of exchange between Hollywood and the public. And it did work out that way, because once we got into the theaters, we got a big name, and we got some big names now in the electronic market for us that we wouldn't have gotten if we hadn't been into the theaters.
Okay, and I know one thing that I saw that I thought was hilarious, speaking of the people who said that they either didn't know what was being done or that they were fooled. The funny part to me is Kate Mulgrew, who is the Star Trek star, is the narrator, and then once the movie came out and people started questioning why she was a part of the movie, and again, this is my own opinion, but she said that she had no idea she was a misinformed voice, which I think is, she was the narrator. She's the one who's reading what the movie's about, and then the movie comes out and she says, well, I had no idea what I was reading. I didn't know, which I just think is hilarious.
It is hilarious. Basically, yeah. She was just listening to her agency. Her agency told her what to say, and you know, when the DVD comes out for The Principal, we have a part in the DVD where it's called Thought Crime. It's a movie about thought crime. It's about 20 minutes long, and we have this whole issue about Kate Mulgrew in that little mini movie, and we have her on tape saying that when she reads the script, she has to know what it's talking about. She has to know it thoroughly in order to give a good narration. So right from her own mouth, she did admit that she knew what the whole movie was about, and so it is kind of contradictory for her to say in the news media that she didn't know what it was talking about.
And then I know some of the other big names were Lawrence Krauss, who those who have watched my videos is not certainly not on the top of my list of the most favorite people, and also Michio Kaku. Who else did you have?
Max Tegmark, a famous physicist, astrophysicist from MIT. He's actually the star of the movie, in my opinion, because he's the one that admits the most on camera. And then, of course, when he was approached by the press about his part in the movie, he said, "Well, I wouldn't have done it unless I knew what the movie was about." And of course, he didn't want to be associated with me. He actually named me personally, but he doesn't even know me. Never wrote me an email. Never asked my views, and never asked to verify what the people were saying about me. So it was basically just an overall shotgun blast by the media to try to knock us down. And if you see the movie, you're going to see why, because we're basically bringing out information that's never been brought out on a scale that we have brought it out in a movie theater for people to see, and then soon on DVD. So it's still going to have a sting to it.
Okay, and I just wanted to tell you right now that that's why I had a lot of respect for you in my personal search. It's hard to find those people who are willing to stand up and buck the system, and it's something that I'm doing, and I know that it's not easy because you get it from all directions. People just aren't happy with you wanting to change the status quo. So I know at many points you could have stepped back and just said, I'm getting hit too hard. But the fact that you kept going, I just wanted to tell you that there's a lot of respect from me as far as that goes. I don't think we live on a ball, but we'll get into that more here in a second. Bob, anything you want to say to Robert before we start getting into kind of what we think?
Well, actually, I was just I was going to ask him a couple of questions. I guess we can probably even start that now.
Shoot, yeah.
So, Robert, I'll tell you basically how I came across the flat Earth idea was I was researching NASA. I was a big follower at one time of Richard Hoagland, and I was interested in why it appeared that NASA was faking so many images, and so much of their data seemed to be incredibly unrealistic. And I also used to be a satellite engineer. I worked in the satellite industry, and when I started researching that, I kind of came to the conclusion that all of that was phony, and I came up with ways that at least in my mind I was able to explain a lot of that stuff. So I guess when I was looking at this, that's kind of when I came to the conclusion, or when I was looking around for it, that's kind of when I stumbled across flat Earth. And so I was kind of curious what your thoughts are on NASA, and what kind of credibility they have, and if you kind of share any of the same views that we do, like about the Apollo missions, maybe, for example, or anything like that.
Yeah, I think NASA has to be taken with a grain of salt. Everything they say has to be taken with a grain of salt. That is, sometimes the whole salt cellar. For example, today NASA is touting this mission to Mars, where one of the satellite probes detected some kind of ridges in the terrain of Mars that look like water, or look like marks that water would make if it was running. Like, for example, if rivers are made on Earth by the water cutting through rock, or however the water cuts, Well, they figured the same thing on Mars, and I'm not particularly bothered by the fact that they may think water is on Mars, because water is all over the universe. We've done studies on that, and it's not unusual to find water on any planet or any. It's even in the sun, believe it or not, they found water. There's huge water clouds out in deep space that they found. So water is everywhere. But the conclusion that they made from this so-called water on Mars is that, well, this is the prime ingredient for life. And so they implant the idea into people's minds that, okay, well, gee, water plus biology equals life, and so the average person in the street figures, well, there's life on Mars. And NASA never qualifies this. They never say that the idea of having life on Mars is pretty remote, because it's a very cold planet. It has no resources for plant life or animal life and things of that nature. Just because they see water, this gives them the idea that there's life. That's what I don't like about NASA, is the implications that they draw from the evidence that they see. And they have a reason why they want to get people to think about life on other planets, and that's because if they do, well, that answers the question of the centrality of the Earth, you see, because if there's life out there elsewhere that evolved just like they think it evolved on Earth, well, then that doesn't make us really special, does it, here on Earth? That makes us just one of the crowd, so to speak. And that's exactly what they want people to believe, that we're just one of the crowd, we're just another speck of dust out there with no significance, no nothing. And now if that's not true, if there is no life out there and we are in the center of the universe, then we are very significant, you see. And they don't like that, because why would the centrality issue rub them the wrong way? Well, if the Earth is in the center of the universe, that means someone with a capital S had to put us there, because that's not a chance, you see. So that's what we're fighting against, the NASA, with the NASA thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, I mean, it kind of takes us away from the idea that there is a creator, that there is a God, and when I look around, I can't help but see, the intelligence behind the creation. I mean, to deny that to me is patently absurd. But one of the things that I think they said today was that it was salt water, most specifically, that they found. And I just thought, I have to wonder how many times they're going to make this announcement about water on Mars. I think over the past 3 or 4 years, they've announced it. They even showed a lake, I believe, in one of their pictures that was sitting there. So it just seems like it's kind of this redundant thing going on over and over and over again with the water.
Yeah, so in order to keep the news items up, you just keep repeating the same old. That's what a newspaper does. Every once in a while, they'll stick old news in the newspaper and make it look like it's new news.
Well, that's what I found too when they just recently said that they ate lettuce for the first time. Yeah, I went back to a story I remember seeing 10 years ago, and sure enough, there it was. That they had astronauts were eating lettuce 10 years ago, but they announced it this time, first time in space we've ever eaten lettuce. Like it passed the 10-year mark, so you brought it up again. Even funnier, I heard today that they said that the water was seasonal, and then at the end of that season it would dry up. And I said, are they confused about which direction that Mars is from the sun? It should freeze up. How's it drying? It's not any closer to the sun. It's twice as far.
That's a very good question. How is this water flowing to make these ridges that they claim if it's so cold on Mars? It's way below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, so any water would be ice.
So I've got some questions for you based on what you just said. So you think you would say the stars we see in the sky, are suns?
If there's something strange in your neighborhood, who you gonna call? If there's something weird and it don't look good, who you gonna call? That's right,